Breaking right now, an extraordinary courtroom verdict. Prince Harry has lost his £50 million case against the Daily Mail. But today, as he arrives for a speech at Chatham House, the moment this devastating verdict is announced, I can tell you, he has also lost his reputation. This man lied in court. He committed perjury. And he can sue me if he wants. King Charles must now strip his titles. This case, this verdict was make or break for the Duke of Delusion, and it is over. It's worth pointing out he's also dragged 7 other claimants down with him, including Baroness Doreen Lawrence, a woman who the Daily Mail supported through the murder of his son, Stephen Lawrence. However, the judge, Justice Nicklin, has accepted the explanation of all the Daily Mail journalists in question. This was not a split decision, as many of us suspected. This was a slam dunk for the Daily Mail. It wasn't even close. So today we are going to get into this astonishing verdict, which has been delivered just this afternoon with a special royal superstar panel. Joining us, legendary commentator Hugo Vickers, the author of Queen Elizabeth II, A Personal History. The American journalist and broadcaster Paula Frolick of Paula Frolick Uncensored on YouTube and Substack. And the royal columnist for the Daily Telegraph and The Spectator, Lee Cohen of The Tea with Lee. But first, I just want to give you some of the executive summary from Justice Nicklin today, because it is astonishing stuff. In this written verdict delivered from the High Court, Justice Nicklin said Associated called journalist witnesses who gave lawful explanations for the sourcing of the disputed articles and incidents. The court accepted their evidence, including their denials of unlawful information gathering. The allegations were serious. They included allegations of dishonesty, unlawful conduct, and deliberately false evidence. The more serious and less likely an allegation is, the more convincing the evidence must be before a court can find it proved. And a special mention today for Charlotte Griffiths, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday newspaper. A woman who has had to put up with a lot, actually, over the past few years, as Prince Harry claimed that he had never met her, that he didn't know her, in order to try and destroy her career. Of course, I believe one of the most devastating moments in this case was the final day, when the Daily Mail produced the most astonishing personal Facebook messages exchanged between Griffiths and Prince Harry, in which it was very clear the two had had an intimate relationship that Charlotte had never previously publicly disclosed. Harry has to explain why he lied in court about his relationship with Charlotte Griffiths. And I repeat, Charlotte Griffiths has been vindicated today alongside all of the Daily Mail journalists, especially the head of the Royal Rota, Rebecca English. Personally, I thought she was on the ropes with her particular case, but Justice Nicklin says absolutely not. And also Katie Nicholl, a woman who has her own cancer battle going on, and Prince Harry still despicably dragged her into court. So all of this explains why Associated newspapers have punched back hard today, and I do not blame them for this for a single second. I want to take you through the Daily Mail statement. No doubt this was penned by Paul Dacre himself. Associated Newspapers welcomes today's judgment, which is an overwhelming victory for the Daily Mail and its journalists and for a free press generally. Mr. Justice Nicklin today cleared the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday and dismissed every single one of the 97 allegations made by the claimants. In every case, the judge accepted the honesty of our journalists' evidence on how they source their stories. This is a magnificent vindication of the Daily Mail's journalism for some of the most outrageous allegations made when the case was launched in a blaze of publicity 4 years ago, placing bugs in people's cars and homes, listening to calls as they were made, and illicitly accessing bank accounts. No credible evidence was ever presented. As we said at the time, these allegations were lurid and preposterous and were a fishing expedition by the claimants and their legal teams in a politically motivated campaign to muzzle the free press. The reputations of our decent and hard-working journalists were terribly impugned, and today they have been exonerated. As the judgment clearly shows, every single article was legitimately sourced. Associated Newspapers thanks Mr. Justice Nicklin for his patience and wisdom that he has displayed through the misguided legal action, which has wasted so much valuable court time and more than £50 million in legal costs. We will look to resolve outstanding issues, including the recovery of the costs we have incurred while defending ourselves against the egregious litigation. Now, Prince Harry should be bankrupt as a result of this, although the understanding is that he does have some type of insurance. But he is morally bankrupt. He relied on phone hackers. He relied on criminals. And he has been exposed for the man he is, a man who will lie about the royal family, about the British press, and a man who I do not believe has any place anymore in this country. His final words in court, which Dan Wootton Outspoken used AI to exclusively recreate, I believe were scripted, as he broke down in tears and attempted to win over the judge and the media by invoking his wife, Meghan Markle. Watch this.
I've never believed that my life is open season to be commercialised by these people. To act in the public interest is to interest the public. I fundamentally reject that. Having my life, like others, commercialised in this way since I was a teenager, delving into every aspect of my private life, listening to calls, blagging flights so they could see where I was going. It was a time when everyone was in competition with each other. To sit here and go through this again, and to hear them claim in their defence that I don't have any right to privacy, is disgusting. They have made my wife's life an absolute misery, my lord.
Well, it was never about her, it was about you, and you have been exposed. So no wonder, as Prince Harry arrived at Chatham House the moment that this verdict was handed down, there was no security, but also no crowds whatsoever.
Range Rover and make his way into Chatham House. Like I say, this is the first of a sequence of events. He is also expected to hear that ruling regarding Associated Newspapers, that joint ruling, later this afternoon. And of course, we know that he is then travelling on to Birmingham to mark 1 year ahead of the Invictus Games taking place there. So that is Harry arriving at Chatham House a few moments ago for the Invictus Games Foundation conversation.
He went inside looking haunted and got up on stage. Remember, by the way, Harry had his script. He had his script in his pocket and was planning, if he had won on even one of the 14 counts, was planning to get up there and say, I'm the Dragon Slayer. Not only have I brought down the Daily Mail, I've just brought down the entire British mainstream media. Instead, he had to go ahead with this.
I hope you leave this conference with a deeper understanding of what the Invictus movement really is, and not simply a week of sport every 2 years, but a community united by one belief, that the unconquered human spirit exists in every nation, and that our shared responsibility is to create the conditions in which it can flourish. Thank you.
He is a broken man. To this very special superstar panel reacting to this major breaking news, Hugo Vickers, I mean, this wasn't even close. It was a slam dunk. Lots of people thought the judge might just give Harry sort of a win on one of the 14 just so he had something to walk away with. But he didn't get that. This is a total destruction of his case and I believe his reputation today.
Well, and you raise a lot of interesting points, I must say. And you mentioned his reputation. I mean, he hasn't done an awful lot to enhance his reputation in the last few years. You know, when you talk about some of the things to do with his wish for privacy, well, we think back to the memoir Spare, which I myself reviewed. I read the whole thing. I found a great number of faults of fact in it. So I think he was probably really unwise to go to court against the Daily Mail unless he had, you know, an absolutely cut and dried case, and he quite clearly didn't. And so we must respect the verdict of the court. And I just wonder what will happen next.
Well, indeed, because Paula Frolic, remember, if it wasn't for this last-minute, very sensible intervention from King Charles, Harry would right now be residing at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It is. I think we all know exactly why he's not there now. But also, you know, Dan, the point is, I think Harry knew he was going to lose. This is a last-ditch effort. So back in December 2025, there's a very interesting article on the Upsetter Substack right now, and it has an interview of a man who actually tried to intervene and get the mail to settle after all of the evidence was made public. It was around Christmas time, and Harry and team knew they were up a creek without a paddle. They saw all the notebooks. They saw everything that the Daily Mail had. They tried to settle, and the Daily Mail pretty much went, no, we shall not. Let's go to court. They wanted to put the nail in that coffin. And right now he's financially up a creek, reputationally up a creek. And I think Invictus is going to be the ultimate victim in this.
Which is obviously a sad thing, although a lot of people questioning actually whether Invictus should even go on anymore. We will come to that because, of course, that's officially the reason why he's in the United Kingdom. Lee Cohen, what can Harry say about this now? I mean, if he goes ahead and says, oh no, you know, the judge got this wrong, he's going to look even more insane.
Well, Dan, it's hard to imagine him looking more insane considering the circus of the past few days, not to mention of the past 10 years. I think his reputation is irretrievably stained. And frankly, I feel compassion for the veterans who are his charity is representing, and all of the charities that are connected with him. What charity would possibly want to be associated with this man after he has, had so many blows to his character, to his reputation? It's amazing. I don't know if you recall, a couple of years ago, there was a hero who was killed on the battlefield that has a charity in his name, and his mother objected to Harry receiving an award in her son's name, and she remarked that his reputation is just too divisive and too controversial, and I think we're seeing that play out now.
Well, we absolutely are. Now, I want to talk about one of, I think, the most damning parts of the case for Prince Harry. It's also one of the most salacious. But remember, he is the man who decided to drag into court a former fling to try and destroy her. And remember, this is what he said in court about Charlotte Griffiths. This is from our AI exclusive recreation.
I had no idea she was a journalist. I never used the name Mr. Mischief.
Did you meet her in Ibiza?
I don't think that can be right. I don't believe I have ever been to Ibiza other than with my now wife. My social circles were not leaky. I want to make that absolutely clear. I would have to cut contact with this person.
Now, Paula Frolic, the messages were produced as evidence. And remember, Charlotte Griffith, all credit to her, because I know I've been quite tough on her about certain aspects of the Harry story, but she had never released these messages publicly. It was only once Harry took her to court that she went public with them. Now, he said to her in the messages, this was in December 2011, hi, it's H, in case you were confused by the name in the picture. So he said, it's H. She replied saying, hello, Mr. Mischief. So that was a name that she had given to him, but it was included in the messages and the back and forth exchange. And the back and forth exchange, let's just be honest about it, makes it clear that there was an intimate relationship between the two of them. So surely Prince Harry was lying in court. Will there be a consequence to that?
I'm not sure if there's going to be a legal one in the UK. There will definitely be a social one, because right now I can legally say Prince Harry, comma, a known liar. Or if I was kind, Prince Harry, comma, a known serial memory variant, And the other thing is, in the US, it is very hard to sue someone for libel. You have to have a reputation to defend. And one can argue right now that he does not have that anymore at all. So, I think it's going to be much more social than it will be legal. I'm not sure there's an appetite for the court system.
No, because there never is. And that's the problem. I feel like he is just going to keep on. Look, the problem I've got with him is he keeps on trying to destroy other people's lives. I mean, Charlotte Griffiths and Katie Nicholl, they're people I've known personally, right? Years and years and years ago, we were both on the beat together. They are honest women. I mean, Katie has just gone through her own cancer battle. They both are mothers. And this idea that he wanted to destroy them is quite shocking to me. And I do sometimes think it is just worth actually looking at the messages themselves, because they do paint a particular picture of just how close and I think intimate the relationship was. So this is a particular exchange from January 2012. And Prince Harry says to her, hope you're really well, Griff. So he's calling her Griff. Miss our movie Snuggles. I'm off comms all week. In case you think I'm being rude, keep me posted. Kiss, 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 kiss. Now, Hugo Vickers, just looking at that, just that message alone, that is a close relationship at the very least. That's not someone who you will forget in a couple of years' time. And Hugo, I mean, you're an author, you're a journalist. If a royal was sending you messages like that, you'd remember it, wouldn't you? So I think Harry, unfortunately, has been totally proven wrong, because Charlotte Griffiths was able to bring the receipts.
Yes, it certainly would seem like that. And I don't want to defend Prince Harry in any way at all. I'm afraid I don't think he's terribly bright, and I think he's probably gone into all this and I don't know, maybe been to some extent encouraged by the legal team that he had a chance of winning.
Yeah.
And you know what it's like when you get hooked into these situations, probably egged on to some extent by his wife, because my theory,
Yes.
which I've certainly on many occasions in the past, is that a lot of the things he says don't seem to come from his head. They seem to be put into his head by his wife. Meghan speak, you can often tell that when he's making public statements. I've actually gone so far, if I'm allowed to say it, to say that I think he ought to be wearing one of those orange hostage suits that you sometimes see.
It's sort of the same colour as Paula's jacket.
Well, yes. Well, yes. Well, I don't mean to be rude, Paula. But much smarter jacket anyway. They go right across the orange things. But you know what I mean.
No, I do.
And I would just say this, that I live in a sort of slight atmosphere of chaos. And one day I picked up a copy of Hello magazine that was lying on the floor. And there was a picture of Prince Harry smiling and grinning and looking really happy. And I thought, hang on a minute, what's all this about? Then I looked at the date, 2015, i.e. pre-Meghan. In my view, he's always looked incredibly unhappy ever since he got involved with her. And I think they're always trying to reinvent themselves. And one thing goes on for another. So it's a court case, or it's her cutting up petals and scattering them on the salads and the things that she does. It's all very tiresome. And I was dreading this whole week of him coming to London anyway, because the moment he appears, it becomes a sort of contradiction with the British royal family, who are working for United Kingdom and Commonwealth, whereas he and his wife are working for themselves. And so it's always whatever he's doing, but takes on a great import. And one other point, if I may just make it, is,
Please.
He has supported Invictus Games, which is a brilliant concept, which is to show wounded people that they are not victims. What has he done to himself? He's turned himself into the biggest victim of all time.
So true. And you're completely right. Here are the real royals this week, conducting their duty, going about it without any sort of drama. Although I do say King Charles and the tank, I wonder if he was sending a little bit of a message with that to his youngest son. It's interesting, Hugo, because you talk about Harry. I think he's an empty shell of a man today, actually. I just want to show you one other part of his speech from Chatham House, where I think he looks quite haunted. Now, of course, at this point, it is worth pointing out he knew that he had lost. I've been involved in these types of cases. You're allowed to find out an hour beforehand. So he got the news wherever he's staying. It was meant to be Buckingham Palace. We don't know. He got the news, then had to get straight in his Range Rover with his private security and deliver the speech. But to me, he looked like a haunted man today. Look at this.
Range Rover and make his way into Chatham House.
If you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment to listen now to Prince Harry speaking in Chatham House.
Different governments, different militaries, different organisations, and of course different approaches to recovery. And that's exactly as it should be. No two countries are the same. No two healthcare systems are the same. And no two military cultures are the same either. And what brings us together is far more important than what sets us apart.
And it's like, I mean, what is he talking about? Seriously. This is not your job. It's not your country anymore. It's not your place to comment. And I find it completely bizarre that he pressed ahead with the speech, actually.
Well, he has certainly not befriended himself to the American people. He's made comments trashing our Constitution, trashing our free speech policies, and the fact that he and his wife have become absolute box office poison in Hollywood, the place where you would have imagined, if anywhere, they could have thrived, is just, it's head spinning. And what you really wonder, Dan, is, I mean, don't they sort of war game these things? Don't they plan them out? Don't they think through a sequence of, well, my court case is this day and I'm coming and I refused or I didn't answer in a timely manner the invitation from Buckingham Palace and then I accepted. I mean, it is such a roller coaster ride of chaos that it's mind-boggling. And where are the advisors in all of this?
Well, the problem is, I think they're no longer listening to any advice. They're actually now just doing it themselves. And I've always said, actually, they've had advisors for a long time who they've chosen to ignore. And now we are getting to see what it's really like when Harry and Meghan run their own affairs, and it's total chaos. By the way, Piers Morgan has weighed in on the verdict. It's quite funny. He writes, with tongue firmly in cheek, devastated about Prince Harry's £50 million High Court defeat to the Daily Mail. I do hope it doesn't bankrupt him. But then he wrote, in a more serious manner, massive win for the Mail, massive defeat for the Ginger Whinger and the other celebrities involved who love to use the media when it suits them. How delicious that he's come back to the UK just in time to be humiliated. Expect the mother of all tantrums later. And Paula, I do think this is now bringing the curtain down. It's closing the chapter on the sort of Leveson era in the United Kingdom. Look, the media here used to behave abominably, right? But we're talking 2 decades ago, before I entered Fleet Street, actually, which was after there had been royal editors who went to jail. And trust me, at that point, the bad behaviour that Prince Harry is referring to stopped. But David Sherborne, the very slippery lawyer in this case, and I've had my own courtroom battles against him, Paula, and won, by the way, has been able to convince this cabal of celebrities from Elton John to Prince Harry, that he is somehow going to win this time. This time we're going to be the winner. And you just have to listen to the actual criminals at organizations like Byline Times and Byline Investigates, Paula, who are genuine criminals, like convicted phone hackers. And I really do think we just have to move on now from that era. This has to be the final nail in the coffin.
Well, I do have to take just one point with what you said. I do believe David Sherborne did win. This was $50 million for £50 million.
And he gets
so sorry.
Photo in the paper a lot.
He's made hundreds of millions of dollars off of these cases, has he not? His fees will have to be paid. Now, there is some insurance. It does not cover everything. And I have been told the only person who can actually afford to pay the fees is Elton John, and that he will be on the hook for tens of millions because, of course, in your system, loser takes all or winner takes all. So the loser has to pay the winner's fees. So this will be interesting. And of course, David Sherborne at the end of the day skips off freely with a huge fat check, doesn't he?
And Paula, you were in London last week doing your own independent reporting on this. And you believe, from speaking to your sources, that not only Prince Harry personally, but also now the Invictus Games are in serious financial trouble. What did you discover?
Well, the Invictus Games, as I've been reporting basically over the last year, has been in massive trouble anyway. The government, of course, gave 29 million pounds. Now, the unwritten agreement is that Harry will match or exceed that with corporate or private donations. He has only raised 4 million pounds so far. This is a make or break time for him. He has to raise 25 million pounds from corporations or private donors. And frankly, that's not going to happen. I did meet with somebody from who has knowledge of Invictus Birmingham, and they were saying at this point, if he does not raise it, it will be postponed. If postponed, it will be canceled. And that is a big deal because before this entire mishegas came about, they were already talking about white knuckling it through the Birmingham Invictus and then having a major discussion after about the future of Invictus in general. And I know that people all like to say, Invictus, it's so great. It's for the wounded warriors and the veterans. Now, listen, there's no larger supporter of veterans than I am. Well, perhaps, but I am a big one. And no offense, when I look at the Department of Defense in the United States doing the Wounded Warrior Games every year for $2 million, that's 1.5 million pounds, there is no reason for anyone to be spending 60 million pounds on games where 500 people compete for 1 week. There is no justification for that price tag, period. Not to mention, if you look at books like Tom Bower, and Tom Bower went to the Vancouver Games, nobody showed up to watch the Invictus Warriors compete. They showed up for Katy Perry, who I'm sure was paid magnificently for performing. But it is, at this point, yes, the idea is good. Yes, the idea was borrowed, wink, from the Americans, and he made it into his own. And yes, it was given to Harry to give him something to do. Unfortunately, ever since Harry has left the confines of the palace and not had people to oversee it, the costs have ballooned and it's gotten absurd.
Indeed. So a reminder, Prince Harry humiliated on an international stage with the total rejection of his case against the Daily Mail. Lauren, the insider, has called the Duke arrogant and said he took bad advice that resulted in him losing today. Watch this.
Prince Harry has lost. The defendants have lost. All of the claims have been thrown out. This is what you need to remember. The court bill, the lawyers' fees are over £40 million. What you can decode from exactly what has gone on is that Prince Harry evidently has been taking some bad advice because he went into this thinking he would win. He went into this thinking he would get this across the line and come out of the High Court as a winner. Well, that has not happened. So the media outlets, the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, that are integral to the royal family and are a key part, if not the most important part, of the royal rota, are going to absolutely go for him now. This is an arrogant prince that I don't believe has been taking advice. He went into this case like a bull in a china shop. You don't get to allegedly be setting up pap shots and leaking, and then on the other hand want to claim your privacy has been breached and you are the victim. The only victim in this case is Harry's bank account, because he will be picking up this bill, and I have no sympathy for this hypocritical prince whatsoever.
So is there any win for Prince Harry today? Well, I turn to Chris Shipp, who is the royal editor of Woke TV, but we know he has been effectively doing the PR bidding for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex all week. They leaked him that private security report, and all of his coverage has been very much slanted in their direction. So he has referred to two specific parts of Justice Nicklin's findings today in court. I just want to take you through it. So Shipp writes, the High Court Judge, Mr. Justice Nicklin, is clear that suspicion of unlawful activity is not evidence of unlawful activity, which seems to be suggesting that Chris Shipp is saying, well, maybe the Mail is still guilty despite this finding. And remember that the burden of proof in a civil case is far, far less than a criminal case. The judge only has to be effectively over 50% convinced with the argument to find. But this is what he's quoted specifically. The court accepted that given the nature and age of the allegations, the claimant's cases often depended on interference, but suspicion, even when understandable, was not enough. The claimants had to prove that the information complained of had been obtained unlawfully. The court rejected the argument that simply because information was private and because associated could not positively explain how it had been sourced, the relevant article must have been unlawfully sourced. And then referring to one article Harry claimed was based on unlawfully obtained, and it was that he was to be the godfather to a child of his nanny, Tiggy Legg Burke. The judge ruled, Harry's evidence does not, without more, establish that the information was obtained through voicemail interception, still less that it was obtained by or as the product of an unlawful act carried out or commissioned on Associated's behalf. Now, Lee Cohen, I'm sorry, this just feels absolutely desperate if this is the only positive that Harry is taking from the verdict. At the end of the day, if you look at lots of the specific cases, Lee, where the journalists got up in court, they were actually able to say, no, I received this story from X, from a friend of Harry's who had been sitting around a campfire, for example.
Well, Dan, I think the only positive for Harry is what he will do with this bad news for him, and surely he will use it to his victimhood narrative that he's never far from. But having said that, I find it interesting, and I'm no lawyer, but I'd like to hear perhaps from Paula. Absolutely every allegation was dismissed.
Yeah.
There wasn't one, not one, and the judge made a remark that Prince Harry went beyond giving factual evidence. I mean, that's a lot. Once again, I go back to who was advising this guy. When he was in the bosom of the royal family, he, of course, had handlers and advisors and counselors that kept him from the self-harm that we're now seeing. We're seeing a man self-destruct.
Indeed. Well, just before you come in, Paula, I actually want to show you a moment in court. It was one of those astonishing moments in court where the judge, this is Justice Nicklin, the man who was actually going to be making the decision that was make or break, tried to give Harry some advice during the evidence because Harry, of course, was irritable and difficult to deal with and was not following instructions. And he didn't actually take this advice well from Justice Nicklin. Watch.
Mr. White's job is to put allegations to you. This is a big moment. You're doing exactly what lots of litigants do. You tend to argue back about what he is putting to you. You don't have to bear the burden of arguing the case today that's for Mr. Sherborne.
I had a bad experience with Mr. Green.
You can simply say, I don't accept that, or I don't know about that.
I am intent on you not having a bad experience with me, but it is my job to ask you these questions.
But Paula, Harry now just seems to live in a bubble of paranoia where there is always some type of plot against him, even in his father's own courts.
Yeah, but this is of his own making, Dan. I mean, you ask who is advising him. No one. They've all quit. Look at all of the staff that have quit over the 5 years after they've been hired for good advice. The good advice has been ignored. They've been belittled. They all left. The only people he has right now is his PR man, Liam McGuire, God bless. And of course, Sunshine Sachs. But, the bigger issue is he was taking advice from David Sherborne, who he felt had won before, with settlements. And again, I think he did try to get out of it. There is that piece today, again, from the Upsetter saying all of the claimants were like, okay, let's go to the Daily Mail and let's settle right now. We have to settle. It was even on Christmas Eve, they were trying to settle because they didn't realize that the Daily Mail would have kept all this evidence from 20 years ago. They assumed most likely that, notebooks would have been destroyed after 5 years. Well, guess what? They aren't. And, it's just, Harry is a child, as we've seen over and over and over. He was protected by the palace. I have people who worked with him even before Meghan, and they said that he was obnoxious and arrogant. And we saw that come out in the court. Let's look at the text he sent to Charlotte Griffiths. Ugh, I have to go press the flesh. I can't stand begging for money. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. I don't have them right in front of me. However, this is a guy who literally thinks that working is showing up 1 hour a month, taking photos, smiling and playing with children, and that is how charity is done. Instead of actually working 60 to 80 hours a week, like a lot of charitable people in the US do. I'm not sure about the UK, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, this is the message you were talking about, Paula, where Harry was saying, and this is to Charlotte Griffiths again, Charty, he called her in this case. I wish I was there, sugar, but unfortunately stuck in Cornwall doing army stuff. Otherwise, I would have been there playing and drinking you under the table. Ovie. The whole thing raised a lot of money, so I'm pretty happy. Just wish I could have been there, especially now that you're there. Do you ever work? So it's very clear his focus was absolutely on the social rather than the good work. Of course, this has now turned into a total calamitous week for Prince Harry. I just want to show our viewers around the world some of the front pages of our national newspapers today. So this is before the court verdict. So there's The Sun. King snaps at Harry. The Daily Express also splashing on this story. Harry turned away from the palace. And even the broadsheet Daily Telegraph, which is widely considered to be the sort of newspaper of the royal family. King puts foot down on to block Harry's stay. And I think it was the briefing to The Sun that was probably the most interesting, because they're very much trying to paint a picture about the fact that King Charles has just had enough. And it was the monarch personally who was able to slam the door shut to Buckingham Palace. Now, whether that's just his aides trying to, make Charles look a little bit tougher than he actually is in this case, I'll let you decide. But this is the royal aide who they are quoting, saying, the king was being tested beyond endurance. Sources say his U-turn, this is about staying at Buckingham Palace, came after a Friday deadline passed, and a month of indecision meant palace staff needed for his stay were allocated elsewhere. Harry, who is understood to have arrived in Britain, will stay in private accommodation. A royal aide said the king's patience snapped. He wants to be a loving father and grandfather, but that was being tested beyond endurance. He is not willing to be pushed around, nor to indulge a constant state of chaos. Meanwhile, sources close to Harry are even questioning if the offer for the palace was genuine. So, Hugo Vickers, do you think, given these circumstances, King Charles was right to end up banning Harry from staying at Buckingham Palace?
Well, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I would have thought there were quite a lot of rooms at Buckingham Palace which could be made available at very short notice if he wanted to. I think probably there's something more going on behind the scenes, using emotional blackmail. Do I bring the children? Will you ever see your grandchildren? What about, that whole security issue which she keeps banging on about? But it's very sad, because actually what I've always hoped would happen would be that there could be some kind of personal reconciliation between father and son for two reasons. One, we know from Prince Harry himself that the king said he didn't want his last years to be made miserable by family disputes. And secondly, whatever you think about Prince Harry, from the fact that he, going back to his childhood when he lost his mother, he is carrying around a lot of emotional baggage, and he's got a lot of problems, I suspect, out in Montecito as well with his wife and children. And I think, if his father dies, let's say, and he hasn't reconciled with him, he's going to be even more of a mess than he is already. So in that respect, I hope that there could be some sort of reconciliation personally. As for him taking any part in royal life, royal working life, no, because as we've seen, the moment he appears in this country, he becomes a total distraction. People just write about what he's doing, what he's thinking, what is going on, this and this and this and this, and it just takes away from, as I said before, the very important work that our royal family are doing, which they're not doing for themselves, they're doing for the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Hugo, because it looks like Harry is still pushing for a meeting with the king this week and has not ruled out bringing the children. So he's saying London is too dangerous, but potentially the children will still come in to go to Althorpe, where it's believed that they're filming for a documentary to broadcast next year for the 30th anniversary of the death of Princess Diana. And the Daily Mail has actually reported today that sources close to Prince Harry say he is looking forward to spending time with the king. So this is an insider at the Mail who obviously are totally involved in the story today, but they are still reporting on what Harry wants. And they say Harry is still keen to see Charles, which he is looking forward to. I mean, Hugo, would that be a big mistake for the king in these circumstances?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I honestly think, as I just said, I think it's very important that they should have some sort of reconciliation. I think we all understand that on a human level, of father to son. Publicly, for work that he might do, no. I think actually he might do the Invictus Games an enormous service by stepping down and letting them have a different patron and getting them get on with it and do their funding themselves without him, because he's now becoming controversial and difficult. But I think the king has always actually been very clever. He's never responded to the numerous jibes that have been thrown at him from Montecito. Remember the Oprah Winfrey interview?
Oh, yeah.
Remember
so
all
much.
He has never said anything.
Queen Camilla being called dangerous.
Exactly.
I mean, it's interesting because, well, actually, let me just tell you what else the source close to Prince Harry has told the Mail on this, because it does look like he's waking up. I would argue, Hugo, maybe I'm not as kind as you, because I would argue too little too late, mate. But this is what the source close to Prince Harry is saying. Harry is really, really keen to bring the kids. He wants to ground them in the UK, in their heritage and their family heritage. They need to see their grandfather, and they need to understand more about where they come from. Their lack of knowledge of the UK is becoming apparent, along with their lack of connection to it. Then they quote a friend, so that they're now saying they're speaking to one of Harry's friends, saying, the problem is that the children are just so excited about this visit. They were told already some time ago that they are coming, and they are beside themselves with excitement. They have been hopping up and down about coming here. They are really excited about the trip. They have been talking about it for months. Harry and Meghan have been telling them about the UK. Harry doesn't want to disappoint them. There's nothing from him to say either way at the moment for sure, but the feeling I get is that he will find a way to make it happen for them, the children, in a way that everyone is happy with. He will try to be the bigger person and bring them anywhere. I mean, honestly, I have my head in my hands, okay? Because to me, this is not just emotional blackmail now against the king. They're playing with their children's emotions, Lee. Because Harry knew he didn't have the security. So why on earth is he telling the children, oh, we're going to come and we're going to give you this great visit, when he knew that security was not going to be provided? I'm sorry, maybe I'm being unkind, but to me, there seems something twisted now, not just in the way that they're emotionally blackmailing King Charles, but I would also say in the way that they are misleading their own children.
Absolutely, Dan. And I mean, someone who cares about a reputation with his family doesn't publish the kind of incendiary things, the kind of unforgivable things. There can be no forgiveness for this son who has caused so much damage, not just to a family, but to a nation. We don't have a monarchy in the United States, obviously. And I, as someone who admires the monarchy and the good that I feel it does, and the compelling things about the government and the way the monarchy really, I believe, allows the United Kingdom to punch above its weight diplomatically in the world. Harry is being dangerous not just to his relations, which is unforgivable too, by the way. He's being dangerous to his whole nation and its system of monarchy. He has accused them of unforgivable things, of racism, and his wife did, and he stood by while she did. I don't think that the public has any appetite for any kind of official reconciliation. Now, a personal reconciliation, absolutely, between father and son, I think is very advantageous, is very palatable, is exactly what would tug at most people's heartstrings. But Harry doesn't deserve that for the unforgivable things that he's done.
Okay, this is really interesting. Look at this footage. David Sherborne, the lawyer who just completely lost this case after, I believe, misleading Harry and a whole load of celebrities for years, according to Chris Shipp of Woke ITV, who we know is in Camp Harry, has just arrived at the Invictus Games event at Chatham House that Harry is attending. Chris Shipp says, presumably, there is much to discuss. Paula, that is going to be one fascinating meeting, because it was David Sherborne who for years was assuring not just Harry, but Doreen Lawrence and Elton John and Sadie Frost and all of the other people involved in this case, like Simon Hughes, the former Liberal Democrat MP, that this is a slam dunk. There's no way you're going to lose. Now he's got to face the music.
Well, I'm sure in his hat, in his bag, he had a very large hat he was going to try to eat in front of Harry. But, the point of this is, Dan, I don't think Harry cares about anyone but himself and his immediate family, as his wife or his children. He doesn't really care about the veterans. He says he does. However, look at someone like Scott Snow, the veteran from Dusseldorf, 2023, who was injured and there wasn't insurance to cover his rehab. He's now thousands of dollars in debt and can't work and lives on a fentanyl patch every day. He doesn't care about that. Harry doesn't care about that. He just wants to basically use veterans to burnish his own reputation and Meghan's. And Meghan also is using that as well by selling her outfits that she wears to Invictus Games. He also certainly doesn't care about his family. He cares as long as they help support him and burnish his own reputation as well as Meghan's. And, you were talking about the children and Meghan. Of course they have to come. Of course they have to be here at some point during this trip, because without them, without the children, how is he going to make that Diana doc? Because the money shot, and this is a horrible thing to say, but here we go. The money shot is the children at Diana's grave.
Oh,
with or without a film crew. Yeah, with or without a film crew. And of course can be filmed by
phone. And that might be enough, because they did that with Netflix. Look, this is a developing story, of course. Prince Harry has just been totally thrashed in court in this £50 million lawsuit against the Daily Mail. He didn't win on one count. I have just been told that Paul Dacre, I mentioned him earlier, he is now the editor-in-chief of Associated Newspapers Limited, has released a personal statement responding to Prince Harry. I am told that this is going to be quite something. So let's get into this. This is the first time I'm reading this. I'm quite excited. Paul Dacre says, Prince Harry wrote a sad book which boasted about his killing of 25 Taliban, his drug taking, and in cringe-making detail how he lost his virginity. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash down all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. For him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not just the biscuit, but the whole tin. Poor Harry. I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case. The bitter irony is that his mother Diana liked the Mail. We were her paper. We took her side in her acrimonious breakup with Charles. She and I would speak and meet. The Mail's superb royal reporter, that is referring to Richard Kay, was her friend and confidant. The truth is that this trumped-up action, which has cost well over £50 million and wasted a huge amount of valuable court time, should never have been brought to trial. That it did raises profoundly disturbing questions about the conduct of elements of the legal profession. Today's verdict is not just a victory for Associated's magnificent journalists, several of whom have had a terrible toll imposed on their health and lives, but a free press generally. Make no mistake, this was a conspiracy supported by Hacked Off to destroy a paper. Financed by the orgy-loving racist Max Mosley and involving the actor Hugh Grant, it was also a sinister bid to resuscitate Leveson 2 and impose statutory regulation on the press, which even now is rearing its ugly head in Labour's media green paper. Hugo, I don't think I've ever quite read a statement like that after a court victory. Paul Dacre has waited for years to say that, and I think it is damning, isn't it? Especially because he does raise the fact that Princess Diana, because remember, Harry keeps saying, oh, I'm doing her work. You know, I'm doing her work on Earth. No, she liked the Mail. She liked the Mail. She liked Richard Kay. She met up with him regularly. And Paul Dacre. I think that's an incredible statement, Hugo. Your reaction?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no surprise to me that he would make a statement like that because he's the victor, isn't he? So he can do that. I would just wonder if I could go back to one other thing about the children, which
Please.
worries me much. We see endless pictures of the backs of their heads. They have never, they will never remember meeting either of their grandfathers. And I think at a certain point, there's going to be the most terrible sort of revenge from them. They're going to be very upset at the fact of the way they've been treated. They've been used for publicity purposes. If they've been led to believe that they're going to meet their grandfather now, and it may or may not happen, and if it only happens so that they can take part in a documentary, that's even sicker. I think it's a very dismal situation. I don't really know what to say, but I think the sooner he goes back to Montecito, the better. But I don't think he's going to get a very good welcome there from his wife when she, wherever she is at the moment, because she'll be pretty angry about the verdict, won't she?
She absolutely will be. She absolutely will be, for very good reason, because regardless of what everyone says, Meghan Markle was actually always very reluctant for Prince Harry to press ahead with this case, and I think for very good reason. What a fabulous superstar panel today. Thank you so much to Paula Frolic, who is the author of Paula Frolic Uncensored on YouTube and Substack. I can't wait to read her verdict on this verdict. Hugo Vickers is, of course, the legendary royal commentator, author of Queen Elizabeth II, A Personal History. And Lee Cohen is a royal columnist for the Daily Telegraph and The Spectator, and we love him as The Tea with Lee.